What's up, everybody? We are back. John Delarose here, delarose.com, DELARROZ.com. I am a comic creator and an award-winning author, so if you would like to support the channel, check out my books. If you like my thoughts on comics or just want to check things out, go to the links in the description below. I'm happy to have people reading. It's the goal here. All right, this is Daredevil Volume 1 by Mark Waid and Chris Samnee. And if you guys did not know, I am reading through Daredevil. There's an unbroken run of these starting with the Epic collections dating back to like 1993 and going up to current times. So pretty cool. Not many characters have a very easy reading order like that. And maybe I'll make one of those videos once I'm done reading everything. Just kind of show everybody the path that I took in reading all this. But cool stuff. We've got a nice cover by Mike Allred. I really love Mike Allred's art. He does an issue in here, and that makes me happy too. It's very different than the Daredevil that came before. This is a completely different direction. Bendis and Brubaker, and even Diggle to some degree, had, and even before that with Kevin Smith, and before that with Chichester and all them, kind of had this vision of Daredevil where it's just this like really dark sort of setup. And Waid says, no, I'm going to do the exact opposite. This is a 600 and something page omnibus, and it's got the cool like Daredevil radar sense on the inside here. And it collects Daredevil's, the 2011 issues 1 through 27, the 10.1, because they were doing the 0.1. These are supposed to be jumping on points. Some crossover stuff with Spider-Man and Punisher, and that's it. And so there is a volume 2 of this to complete the whole run here, but this is where it starts. Now, the original artist on this run is actually Marcos Martin, and he does a lot of this, and so does Paulo Rivera. And there's a few other that get in there also. But it starts out, you kind of see this like mobster wedding, and you get you get the tone that's different just based on the coloring. Coloring's very soft compared to what we saw in the past. It doesn't have that realism to it. You get a little spot here. I like that they circled the spot. So the spot is the villain who's going to show up here, and he is actually going to start to kidnap people. But this little circle here denotes that that's important, right? And you might not see that otherwise. Comics is not a subtle medium, right? And so when you see stuff like that, like they highlighted that very much on purpose, because even though that was there without that little circle around it, you might not have noticed it. And then you might not have seen it coming when the spot comes out and Daredevil actually handles him. So Matt Murdock at this juncture is kind of known as Daredevil, but he's still going around going, I'm not Daredevil. And it's causing problems in the courtroom for him. So he's actually advising people to act on their own at this point. And here's a nice little montage of him walking across the street. Mark Waid really actually does these like personal scenes very well. He gets very into the lore of the character on that level, which I enjoy. But we start this plot where Daredevil, you know, before this, like he was the ninja assassin in charge of the Hand, and so the heroes are not quite sure if he's back to normal yet or what's going on. Not really trusted. You start out with each issue really has its own villain sort of set up in the beginning here before it kind of gets into a continuing plot. But Mark Waid does a really good job of establishing sort of what Daredevil's doing. You know, he's maybe in the right mental sorts, maybe not. Foggy's kind of concerned about him right now because, of course, there's been too many problems in the past. There's this DA that is trying to date him in some ways. This is a classic, going into the zoo and fighting against lions as a mobster chases him based on the whole Spot situation from before. Fun stuff. But eventually Daredevil gets involved in this situation, and each one has these kind of weird court cases involved in it. And there's this company, and they're being a front group for like Hydra and the Black Spectre, all these groups that are out there. And Daredevil is investigating, kind of finding out that this exists. Here's AIM. It's got you see just like the very like almost 4-color, like old school, like they're flat colors almost through this. I actually really love the style. It was a throwback to the classics. And actually, if you read 60s and 70s Daredevil, it felt a lot more like this than it did the stuff that preceded this with Bendis and Brubaker. Except this, the pacing's a little better in this, I think. But the other refreshing part about this is it's not another, like, Kingpin story where the Kingpin's got something. He's going after Hydra and AIM. It's really an all-over-the-map thing. And they have this, like, little transparent molecule disc or whatever the hell it is. And it's got all this information on all their bad guy groups. And Daredevil actually gets that. So after the next several issues, they're all coming after Daredevil and then dealing with that. I love the radar in this issue. He's got his radar sense, and everybody always portrays it kind of differently. But the way it's done in this Mark Waid run, I think, is really nice. I really enjoy it. See all the heartbeats of the children as he's kind of trying to protect them. Good stuff here. You can do a crossover. Black Cat and Spider-Man are a part of this. Black Cat's actually hired to steal Daredevil's little thing, and she kind of tries to seduce Daredevil, and then ends up not stealing it because she's Black Cat, so she's not all bad always, you know. And they end up working together to try to deal with the bad guys on this. And this actually lasts a while. This whole like plot line with this like data dump device that he has that can destroy all these companies, or companies, whatever they are. He goes down and fights the Mole Man, who stole Batlin Jack Murdoch, his father's body, but he was really going after this. This is really creepy. His old lover's body, to hug her in her death. And Daredevil was kind of caught in the middle of that. But somebody else orchestrated it, and that's what's starting to come up. All this stuff starts to be orchestrated, and there's a bad guy behind it all, and it starts to slowly come together after all. You get all these nice one-off plots, and it starts to build a mystery. Now we're finally getting into some different artists before we settle on the one who's going to take over for the rest of the run, which gets me so excited. We're finishing up that AIM plot. Daredevil really, he has one with the Punisher crossover as they go through that. This is the crossover with that. You can tell the art's really different than the Punisher. And Avenging Spider-Man crossover. It's like, this was they really milked this crossover with this like AIM plot for a while. And then we get into our new artist, who is Chris Samnee. And Chris Samnee is my favorite, probably, modern artist. He has a very Alex Toth style of doing things. You see the thick, simple lines. It looks really simple, but it forms a beautiful picture when you do it. It is like classic comic fare. Look at the detailed background. Like I said, they're all simple lines in theory, but it just like is beautiful. And this was actually, when I was reading this in single issue back in the day, which I did, I actually picked up this issue first. I never saw this stuff before this, but I was very happy with this. They actually are setting up a trap for all the groups, and they're making it so that it looks like the device was stolen from Daredevil so that they kind of get him off his back, and then he ends up giving it back to the Fantastic Four. As you see, like I said, the simple lines, his cartoony feel actually works really well with these colors, these little almost flat colors. And it just provides this really nice feel that makes the Mark Waid run feel very classic comics. Daredevil gets trapped in Latveria, Dr. Doom's area, and they're actually studying him because they want to figure out his radar sense. And this is where it gets really creepy. They actually like blind him. He's blinded already, duh. But they remove all of his other senses. And so he gets this drug cocktail where he like loses his hearing, his sense of taste, and it really screws him up. And gosh, it really frightening. Even though this is like cartoony art, this was really frightening stuff to read, because you're like, oh gosh, can you imagine losing all your senses? And eventually he gets rescued by Iron Man here. And he goes back to the lab, and you see this. Look at this beautiful art setup here. Chris Samnee. This is the sort of flashback as all of this. And Ant-Man's in there destroying all the stuff that's inside of him and bringing him back to normal in theory. But everything's kind of off after this, and Franklin notices it and fires him. Murdoch's been fired before. But here he fires him. Then we get the Mike Allred issue. This is a flashback issue, so it was clearly like a filler that was added dialogue to make it fit within this story. But it's an early origin story about how he and Foggy kind of met, and really good. I remember reading that in single issue too. If it's a memorable single issue, you know it's pretty good. And now we get into this conspiracy, and we see that Matt seems to be going crazy. Milla from Ed Brubaker's run and Brian Bendis' run, the blind lady who he was married to, shows up and doesn't seem to know what's going on. And then Foggy finds the remains of Battling Jack in Matt Murdock's desk. He's really freaked out. And Daredevil's kind of investigating this stuff. And it looks like he's gone crazy. But it turns out, it harkens back to issue 1, that the Spot is involved in this stuff and using his teleportation and all that to kind of mess with Matt Murdock's mind. And he has been trapped by this new villain called Coyote. Who's this guy? He's really creepy. Who actually removes Daredevil's head and removes a bunch of people's heads and has this like whole deal. You see how they use the Spot to like drug run on pregnant ladies. Crazy stuff. Really cool concepts with these villains that are underused. And this is so ridiculous. I love the ridiculousness. His head is gone, but he's blind already, so his body can still operate, and he gets the machine that's hooked up to the Spot to try to take down this bad guy. Very cool creative stuff. This was a very enjoyable arc, probably my favorite here as we went through here. Now Daredevil's flipping out, going, "Who's messing with my head?" And it only gets worse as he gets his head messed with going through here. He battles the Superior Spider-Man, which is going on in Dan Slott's run. That's a single issue. You don't need to know a ton about that, but it's odd. And eventually, this character shows up coming after Daredevil, and it's much like Brubaker and Bendis' run. "I'm going to destroy your life and everyone you hold dear." And we've got the DA lady who doesn't want to date him all of a sudden. Very good personal life development throughout the course of this entire run. Now, there's these people experimenting with Daredevil, his abilities, because they know that he was covered with this acid stuff or whatever. That's what gave him his abilities. So they did it on dogs, blinded these dogs and gave him Daredevil powers to attack him with. And then suddenly there's a character who shows up right here who's named Ikari. And he looks kind of like Daredevil, and there's a reason for that. And he's got all Daredevil's powers. And so they fight, and he's a badass. And Daredevil screws up because he thinks the guy's blind, but it turns out he's not blind. And so Daredevil kind of ruins his own senses and gets his butt kicked. And then it turns out there's this weird thing in his sarcophagus. Again, this is just like a very creative, odd thing, which is controlling all this. And we don't know who it is, but he's the one sending all this stuff after Daredevil. And all this stuff making him go crazy has been going through. Lady Bullseye from Brubaker's run shows back up. And they have a knockdown, drag-out fight to close it out. And it turns out that guy in the sarcophagus is Bullseye. He's not really dead after all, as was established in Shadowland, like most comics. But he is completely paralyzed because of what Daredevil did. And Daredevil actually leaves him in the way he was left midway through this run. No sight, no hearing, no senses whatsoever. And, there is a subplot I forgot to mention through here. Foggy develops cancer over the course of this. There's a really nice backup story at the very end of this issue where he's talking to kids and like seeing how brave they are with cancer and all that. It's really touching. Great stuff. I love all the personal stuff. I love the art direction. The colors are fantastic. This is what I love comics to be. I like Chris Samnee's art, especially when he gets on it. This is... I don't know, Brubaker was very good, and I was so excited about it, I couldn't put it down. And this one, I was close. I could kind of put it down, so I think I have to rate Brubaker higher because of that. But at the same time, maybe that's just because these were single issues, and there were a lot of one-offs that were like, oh, it's over, I don't need to like stay up and read the next issue. I can wait till tomorrow. But I still wanted to read it, and I was still very happy to read it. This is great stuff all the way around. So I'm gonna rate this a 9 out of 10. And I think I like Brubaker's run better, but we'll find out once I finish the next volume. All right, let me know what you think about this. Hit that like and subscribe button. I guess people say that this is controversial, this book, because everybody really likes the Dark Daredevil, and this was like really the opposite of that. It's very, very much wide-eyed adventure sort of action hero stuff. and I don't know. I like that personally. What do you think about this? Let me know, and we'll be back soon.